Hey, it's Craig Syracusa, and welcome to another episode of Walk in Faith, the show where we go beyond the image and we discover who our guests really are. You might know them from TV, the big screen, or even the world of sports, but do we really know who they are as a person? Do we know what motivates them? Do we know what inspires them? Well, that's what we're here to find out.
When his lifelong dream of playing football in the NFL ended, Trent Shelton was lost. Football was all he had ever known. He's here today to talk about how he found a new purpose by leading other people to God as an author and motivational speaker. Stay tuned and walk with us. Trent, thank you so much. Like I said, it was a pleasure to meet you. I really enjoyed the book. So I want to take the first line of your book where you say, let's get right into this.
Yeah.
I love the line. So now tell me, so you started off, in the NFL, and then you transitioned to, is it a motivational speaker, or what would you consider yourself?
Yeah, I guess that's the title most people relate to. I just like to say somebody who just wants to impact lives. So whether that's an author, speaker, just in the space of impacting people.
And now I'm not a huge football fan, sorry. How difficult is it to make it to the NFL? Like, what's the draft process?
It's super difficult. It's like, I think it's less than 1% of people actually make it. Like, I don't know the exact number, but it's like 0.00% of people actually make it. So it's very hard. It's even hard making it to college. You have all these high school athletes, making the college is hard. I actually told my son the other day, he was like, I want to go to Baylor. And I was like, do you know the percentage? Like, it's a 99% chance that you won't make it. And I told him, I was like, that should motivate you, because that's what teachers told me my whole life. It's a 99% chance you won't make it, figure something else out. But I was like, why can't I be that 1%? And so it's tough. And then once you get there, it's even harder, because that's the first step of getting there, especially if you're like me, a undrafted free agent. You start at the bottom of the totem pole. So getting there is a hard step, but staying there is the hardest step. And that's what I struggle with. I bounced around from team to team, but I'm thankful for the experience.
And now when you were a kid, did you play football as a kid?
Yeah, for sure. Since I was 5 years old. Like, that's all that I knew, is not just football. Baseball was actually my best sport, but played baseball, track. I had 2 older brothers. So when I came out the womb, I always tell people, like, literally I probably had a football waiting for me. 2 older brothers, 4 and 8 years older than me. So I always wanted to be like them. And so I was like, I got to get good at sports, because they wouldn't cut me no slack at all. So it helped a lot.
So now, how did you make the transition from the NFL to becoming a motivational speaker?
That was a tough journey. And I gotta kind of tell my NFL story a little bit. So I got cut and released, fired, I guess the best word for people to understand, probably 8 to 10 times throughout those 3 years. NFL, we like to joke, it stands for not for long. Most careers are only 3 years, and that's it. So a lot of kids, like, even watching this, even Tom Brady, he's gonna have to retire, and he has probably a lot more years of not being a football player than he does with being one. So it's like, what do you do after life? Most athletes do not know. For me, I never worked a 9 to 5. Like, that was my career since I was 5 and 6 years old. And so it's very hard to adjust. And in the process of getting cut, I was losing myself. Just imagine, your dream and somebody's telling you you're not good enough. That's how I take it. Like, oh, okay, you're not good enough, so we're gonna cut you, fire you. And I started to battle depression. I started to think, like, what is my life going to be without my everything? And a lot of people are in that space. That's why you see a lot of athletes commit suicide. One of my best friends committed suicide dealing with sports. And that was a big part of me starting rehab time. It took me hitting my rock bottom for me to change my life, because rock bottom taught me a lot. It taught me who was real in my life. Like, I had a lot of friends that were around when it was beautiful. But when I hit my dark spot, a lot of those people weren't around. I feel like sometimes God will strip everything away from you so you can make him the rock of your life and solely focus on him. And that's what happened with my life. And, the birth of my son changed my life. And that situation, just to be totally transparent with you, it wasn't planned. Like, I wasn't even with my wife now, Maria. We were literally just friends, and it happened. And at that moment, I was looking at the pregnancy as a disappointment. I'm like, this is how life is supposed to go. I'm thinking about child support, thinking about all the things I shouldn't have been thinking about as a man. And I kind of tore her down. Like, looking back at Maria, I tore her down because I made it seem like it was her fault. I was in an on and off again relationship. My world was crazy at that point. To fast forward that, though, Tristan's birth saved my life, because it made me look at myself as a man and said, it doesn't matter what you say, what you preach to your son, the tools that you give him. What's going to matter is you being an example. He's going to watch your life. And he's going to say, okay, this is where I want to go or I don't want to go, but you have to be responsible to give him the right tools to be able to help him build his future. And that made me start my process of rehab. And in 2011, what like put the anchor down where I said, this is going to be my life. As I said earlier, my college roommate, one of my best friends, committed suicide.
Anthony, right? Was his name?
Anthony Arline. Yep, committed suicide. And it made me look at myself and say, you know what? We're all going to be here one day. Like, not saying suicidal thoughts, but our depression, but we're all going to be like 150,000 people die every day. Nobody knows the time. My friend told me this and it stuck with me. He said, you're not old because of your birthday. You're old based on how many days you have left. He says, you can be an old 26. You can be a young 55. And that made me really look at my life and ask myself, okay, what is the legacy that I'm going to leave? Like, my biggest fear is leaving this earth filled with things that I should have left here. You know, I want to die empty. And that just made me say, okay, I'm going to get really down to rehab time and start making content for people that are going through and let them know that your current situation is your final destination.
You've said about 20 interesting things in that conversation. The last thing, when you said, and Les Brown, which you probably listened to, he says the richest place is the cemetery, which we're right across from. But a few things, like one thing when you said about your son, like I always think about my son. He was born 3 years ago. Were you there when your son was born?
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, so think about that moment when he came out and you hear him screaming, like instantaneous, your life changes, right?
Change.
I think about that moment. And it's like you completely have to change your lifestyle immediately because, like you said, because they see everything. We can't be a walking contradiction. If I'm going to tell my son to act a certain way and treat people a certain way, I have to be conscious about everything that I do in order for him to see. Otherwise, you can't look at your son in a few years from now and say, why are you acting a certain way when you're setting a bad example?
If we look at adults right now, most adults that are having trouble in life, usually it stems from dysfunction in their home for the most part, right? Most adults are spending the rest of their life recovering from their childhood. And so I'm big on that. It's like, I don't want Tristan or my daughter Maya or my soon to be child, like having to recover from their childhood. I want to be able to give them the tools and say, hey, here's the legacy that I want you to carry on and better. Just like my parents gave me. My dad was in my life. They've been married for a long time, 40 plus years. And they gave me legacy. And I want to take that legacy and further it to give it to my kids, and they further it. And that's what building like a powerful, generational, not a curse, but a generational blessing for my last name.
You're right. Same thing. I've been fortunate. My parents are still together, and a brother and a sister. But not everybody has that opportunity. But what they need to do is break the cycle, right?
Yeah.
If you did have a bad childhood, you have to accept that my parents were a certain way, and I have to move past that and accept that. In the beginning, right, when I was reading, there was people that sort of said like prophecies, right? They saw something in you, and this is the same story with Denzel Washington, which you probably know. Same thing, right? They had a prophecy. You're going to speak to millions of people, and you didn't see that within yourself because you were Mr. Football.
There you go. Like, I was so wrapped in what I wanted to do, I couldn't see that. Like, it's kind of like I was blind, like tunnel vision. Like, and it happened, since I was 5, 6. In the book I talk about me and my mom going to, I think it was like Benny Hinn or somebody. Like, we go to this crusade and, it's people speaking into my life. What was crazy to me is that I'm the introverted child out of my 3 brothers. Like, I'm the one, like my dad says it all the time, like if I had to pick one person, it definitely would have been Trent with being the speaker. I'm the introverted one. And so I go to a church in Tulsa, and we literally are sitting in the back. This is probably 2011, where rehab time had started, but it wasn't what it is today. Like,
and
I was
you
still
were playing football in 2011?
Yeah, I was playing arena. So I was still hanging on to football, even though I didn't love the game no more. So we go to this church, and we literally sit down in the back. We're those guys that like, I'm gonna sit back in the back so the pastor doesn't, my dad's a pastor, so I know how it works. So I'm like, I don't want to get noticed. I want to stay in the back. And literally out of nowhere, the pastor is like, hey, you two. And literally like, there's nobody behind us. So we like look back, like, who is he talking to? And he was talking to us, obviously. He said, you two come down here. And he talks to my quarterback, and then he talks to me, he says, I see you speaking like to millions of people, traveling the world, and I see you being one of the most impactful people of this generation. And even though he said that, and that was super inspiring, I didn't want to hear it because I wanted him to say, I see you getting signed back to NFL. And so when I look back, all these people had, verified the calling I'm living now. I just was too ignorant, wrapped in my own dreams to even see that.
I mean, so you went back to like the reason why you wanted to be a football player, right? It was because of maybe it was like for me, I was an actor as a kid, and that was really because I was insecure. I was trying to be, just you wanted to be more than what I was as a kid. So like as a football player, you wanted to be a football player for a specific reason. So it wasn't that you were ignorant. Because I guarantee if you didn't have that platform, you wouldn't be where you are today. You knew it was all God the whole way, was giving you that opportunity to meet people, for you to be able to speak to, 50 million people a week? I mean, that's a lot of people. 50 million? I have 185 followers. You have 50 million people.
I tell people impact over numbers. I remember when I started with that, I remember when 10 people watched my videos, 100 people, and I was super excited. It starts with impact over numbers. A lot of people, especially in the social media era, we look at numbers and we're like, oh, I don't have this many views, so I'm not doing anything. I remember speaking to my first speaking engagement to end up being literally 2 rows of people, probably 20 people. And those were people that are all invited, my friends and my family. And so now when I speak to, thousands or whatever, to me, it's never about the numbers. The numbers now show me the impact that the message is doing. But if you stay faithful to numbers, numbers will control your life. Even in business, it's like once you reach $100,000, $200 million, you're like, okay, it's not enough. And it's a cycle that you keep trying to achieve. And I'm not telling people not to work hard or set goals. Just know that that's never going to fulfill you in the way that you think that it is.
What do you think gives fulfillment? What gives you fulfillment now?
For sure, peace. Peace is my fulfillment. Knowing that, as you said, knowing that I'm fulfilling my duty on this earth gives me fulfillment. Giving love to my children and my family and serving gives me fulfillment, literally, because I still battle. I think we see a lot of people that are speakers, and especially in the motivational world, and you think that, they have it all together. And every chance I get, I like to let people know, because I want people to be like, okay, Trent goes through this too, or my favorite speaker goes through this too, so I'm not alone. But I still battle depression at times. I still battle me feeling like I'm not enough. Even, I have 10 million followers on social media, on Facebook, but I still go through my times of like, man, am I doing enough? And I just have my system now set in place where when I'm feeling these emotions, I don't stay there, because I always say feelings are real, but they aren't always right. And so I have my facts. I always say facts over feelings. So when I'm feeling like I'm not enough, I go to my certain scriptures that I know that will make me know that I'm enough. Or I go turn on live and I go pour into people, and people are saying, Trent, you helped my life. Okay, I am enough. So I still go through that battle, weekly, but I don't surrender to it.
That's right, and it's like you said, you have to have rituals.
Yeah.
If you don't have rituals, and it's something too, it's like people want to change their life, right? And like you say in the book too, they take small steps. They think that small step is enough. They don't realize that a few steps later, you're going to hit adversity and challenges, so then they give up. But if you have a mindset, and you control your mindset with rituals, and any time you have that negative thought of fear, which we know is the enemy, right? That thought comes in because you're fulfilling your assignment or your purpose, that's when the enemy comes. When you're drinking, hanging out, partying, nobody bothers you, right? Nobody comes against you. There's no challenges. But the minute that you are in line with God, everything comes at you. But that's the time when we build character, right? That's the time when we start to develop who we are. So that's what was happening probably during your football days. That was what happened during your life to lead you to this moment. But now, do you think we all have a purpose? I mean, do you think everyone's born with a purpose or a gift or an assignment?
So this is what I've been talking about lately, probably over last year. And actually, the second chapter in the book is called What's Your Purpose? And I actually went back and rewrote some of this chapter, because I get this question like, hey, Trent, how do you find your purpose? And I always would tell people I'll have a framework, like this is how you find your purpose, etc. And I started to think about it. I was like, do you really find your purpose in the world? And I was like, where are we searching for that? People are searching for the purpose. Oh, what you're really searching for probably is validation. Mm-hmm. So you're searching for placement. You're searching for the avenue, whether it's NFL, or whether it's a motivational speaker, whether it's a TV host. I believe that purpose was given to you at birth. I always say, I am purpose. And I tell myself this every single day. I know that I literally can take my life and fulfill what God has called me to do at any time. I can walk out this studio and live my purpose. I can be on here and live my purpose. So if I lose rehab time, I always tell people rehab time isn't my purpose. It's just a placement. If I lose rehab time, I can still take my life to another avenue and still fulfill my God-given duty and my God-given assignment. So to people watching this, I want to just explore that. God set you apart. He tells that in scripture. He set you apart, right? You're perfectly and wonderfully made. So stop depending on the world to give you a purpose. Stop depending on the world to give you worth. As you said earlier, a lot of times we determine our worth by these external things. How much is in my bank account? How many people follow me on social media? This and this. You were given worth at birth. God already gave you worth. Jeremiah 29:11, he's already given you a plan. And once you understand that, now the world, can't take that away, or the world can't dictate your life anymore. Like you say, you will hit roadblocks, you will hit obstacles, but at the same time, like you are purpose, and literally if you lose that placement, you can still move your life to another avenue and make another impact.
And you say too, you can't fire your purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've heard, you ever listen to Dr. Miles Monroe?
Yes, I have.
I love him. And he says it a little bit differently. Like, and they say about trying to find your purpose, but the purpose is within you.
Yeah.
So we go searching, right, all over. Where is my purpose? Like, you know, in the old days, like our parents would say, I'm going to go find myself, or I'm going to travel throughout Europe to discover who I am, when in fact, it's within us. And then people feel like, too, once I find my purpose, everything is going to be easy, right? I know what I need to do in my life. I want to be a singer or a dancer, and now everything is easy, but that's not the case. And then how do we know that? Okay, I figured out my purpose is, as a kid, I was an actor. I wanted to be an actor, but sometimes a purpose could be disguised as a desire, right? Or as a passion. Right. So how do you know you live in your purpose?
Yeah, man, I know basically because I never wanted to do this. You know, when it comes to like the placement, the avenue, with being a motivational speaker, like I tell people all the time, this was my biggest fear. Like, everybody, I mean, it's the number one fear in the world. I never wanted to be a speaker. I'm the guy that, I always say this, I could be in a crowded room and still feel alone. Like, I'm just that guy. I don't like attention on any of this. So it was God bringing me into something that I didn't want to do, that he called me to do. And the only reason I knew this was my life is I stepped on the stage, Dr. Tony Evans Church, Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship back in Texas. It was an event. His son, Jonathan, was a good friend of mine. He'd been speaking in my life for the last 3 years. Like, hey man, like you got something special about you. My whole family's full of speakers and artists. Like, I know you have something special about you when you speak and you don't even know it. So he comes to me and is like, hey, I want you to speak at this youth event. And immediately I'm like, no, because speaking to youth is hard. Like, I tell anybody that's a speaker out there, if you want to hone your speaking skills, go speak to some kids, because you got to be real and they'll let you know if you're boring. I used to be that kid. So I'm like, I know, like, I'm not going to do that. And so he talks me into it. It's like, you know, I don't know, maybe 1,000 or 5,000 kids. It seemed like 50,000 at the moment to me. I was supposed to go to New Orleans to report to training camp for Arena. I called the coach and said, hey, can I come Saturday? He's like, yeah. He's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I have a speaking engagement. All right, cool, come Saturday. I get on the stage, literally 5-minute speech. I prepare the whole night before. I'm like, okay, I got it. I can just talk about football. They can relate to that. I walk on the stage and I literally forget everything. I go blank. In that moment, I just said these 3 words that I say every time before I do an interview, whatever I said, God use me. And that confidence is so hard to explain. It just went through my body and I just started speaking like real to the truth, and these kids were locked in.
Wow.
And after that, I made the decision. I called the coach and said, hey, I'm not coming.
Wow.
I called my friends, was like, hey man, I'm gonna do this rehab time.
They must have
thing.
thought you were crazy.
Oh, he hung up in my face. He hung up, like literally. He was like, okay, good luck with that. Click. And so I made a pact with God though before I made these calls, because even though I had that feeling, I was like, God, like you gotta go 3 for 3 on these calls. You gotta let me know like this is it. And it's funny, he went 0 for 3, right? And so I called my friends. They were like, some of them didn't understand. Some of them were like, man, you stupid. Like, you're gonna do that? You're gonna leave this lifestyle to go be a speaker? Trent, like your past is too bad. Like, you don't look like a speaker. Nobody's gonna accept you. You have tattoos and dreadlocks. You don't dress. Like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, man, I know this is it. You ever have the parent that you want to call that doesn't answer, like you want to answer the phone?
My mother.
So, yeah, so my dad is that person.
Yeah.
My mom answers it. And my mom is like, I love my mom to death, but she can be like super dramatic. And I call her, I'm like, hey, like I'm not gonna play football anymore and I'm sorry to disappoint you. And even though that's the story I was telling myself, that I was disappointing my parents, which I wasn't. And she got quiet. Like she was like, I looked at the phone, the numbers are still going. She's like, okay, what are you gonna do? And I was like, I'm do this rehab time thing. And she was like, okay. And she walked me through a process. And it's so funny. She's like, God can speak to you, but the enemy can too. Like, are you sure this was God? And I told her, I was like, I never felt so much peace in the midst of fear. I said, I never felt so much confidence in the midst of uncertainty, Mom. Like literally, she said, you know what? That's God. Go do it. I walked into that and I started making videos, the videos people see now, probably 2011, 2012. Within half a year, those videos started to go viral and my life changed forever.
Wow.
Like in that moment.
And that was probably without boosting it. It was just.
No, all organic.
Just
all organic.
Amazing.
All organic. And that's what I tell people. Like when people ask me the how to, I'm just like, I wish I can give you a framework and probably I could write certain strategies out, but literally.
But you said it. It's because you asked God, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm here to serve you. Because we all make deals with God. Listen, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. But you make a deal based on what you really want to do. Like, this is what I want to do, God. You know, I can help you. So we try to make a deal with him, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, if we just say, God, I'm here to serve you. You tell me how I could help you, or I'm here to. Then it's a little bit different. So that's the playbook. It's living for other people. It's living, using your gift, your passion, yes, to serve God, to evangelize. So that's the question. Like you said earlier, that you were Mr. Football. And it's a hard question to ask yourself. But when you ask yourself, who am I? What do you say?
You know, I'm just a person, man, that wants to impact lives. Literally, like that's who I am, and wants to leave a legacy that leads people closer to God. In my way, in the way he's called me to do it. I won't even say my way, the way he's called me to do it, because my way might not be traditional to everybody else. You know, I've seen that even in the church world. Like I've had people like, oh, you don't dress Christian enough. I was like, what is that? You know, like what should I wear? But I know by the fruit that's produced. People are being led closer to Christ. They are getting their life saved through messages, you know, that I put out. And so that's what I care about. I don't care about being the 50 million, you know, I know people say that because it sounds good, but I don't care about that. You know, I don't care about 10 million. I'm still going to be Trent and live my purpose out and let my life be impactful the way God has called me to use it, because that's what fulfillment is. Like these other things don't matter. There's so many people who smile for the camera and die behind the scenes.
Yep.
That was me for a long time. Like literally, I would be the filter life guy, like we see on social media, where everything is perfect, but you're dying behind the scenes. That is not worth it. I refuse to be in a prison of perfection for other people. Like I refuse to do that. Like I want to be open and free. I'm not a perfect human being. I make mistakes. That's not an excuse to keep making the same mistakes. I'm a progressive human being. And I think more of the world needs to see that from people, to like, man, like I relate to this guy. Because, you know, growing up, I would see pastors and like I never felt I could relate to them because it was just always perfect. I'm like, I can't live that life. And then it took pastors coming into my life that was more open about their struggles. I'm like, oh,
You need
okay,
to
this is
humanize
it.
them. So now, after you had this confirmation, like, how does it make you feel to know that, you know, God is using you, or God called you to speak to so many people and impact so many lives?
You know, I try hard to like explain that and embody it. And I go through my moments. You know, New York City is a place for me because I spent time here. My off and on relationship, like I lived here for a period. And so going through that time in my life was tough. And so to come back here and walk by, you know, by the World Trade Centers and just in Soho and just like, man, like it was a point when I was here where I felt like my life was destructive and over. Now to come back here and realize like New York City is my biggest support system. It's crazy. Like it's more, as I call them, rehabbers than anywhere in the world. And to come back here and like, man, like I'm really like living out my purpose. And it's hard to put in words.
Like, what's the emotion?
I mean, grateful and just appreciative. Like when people come to me, I hear it so much now that it's hard not to be numb by it. And I try to make myself feel it every time, because every single time I pick up my phone, hey, you know, this message helped my life. But it's like, don't ever get numb by this, and don't ever think what you're doing, you know, you can get used to it, right? Don't do that. And so I always try to put myself back into that moment. I'll go back to my mom's house in that room and go back and relive that moment so I can create that mood again. And so I'm just grateful, man, that I could be used to help people.
Do the same thing. And I think because we have such a strong foundation and we stay humble, I don't think that will ever happen to you.
Yeah.
For me, I think about, you know, before I worked here and the struggle I went through and what I dealt with as a kid to get to where I am now. And that's why I take I try to help as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah.
But you said something too, which was interesting. And, you know, when people make this decision, they want to change their lives, right? And they say, okay, I'm gonna take a step. But during that process, like when you told some of your friends and they said, are you crazy? You know, and you even have videos about this. People don't understand that friends and family, like they say, they're there for seasons, or they're scaffolding. They're not meant to be in our lives forever. And unfortunately, we don't want to come to that realization that we have to cut people off in order for us to reach our best selves. Like, did you have to cut off some of your friends when you left football, or you left arena football to pursue this career?
Absolutely. You know, some of my biggest videos are about removal, you know, and I talk a lot about removal because I paint the picture like this. I mean, you can have a new destination. I like to say, I remember a time when I was traveling and I went to a new destination. I was actually in Phoenix hiking, and I took off my clothes. I put those clothes in the bag. I went to, I think it was back home or somewhere. And when I got to the new destination, I unpacked that baggage, and literally the clothes, in my mind, I thought they were going to smell great, but it was terrible. I mean, it was sweaty, it was funky. And I like to tell people it's the same thing in life. Like, you can create a new destination, but if you still have the same baggage you're carrying, it doesn't matter when you get to the new destination. Because when you unpack those bags, those same struggles, problems, bad friends or bad environments are still gonna be there. So you have to change your environment to change your life. If I had a rose and this rose had all the potential in the world, beautiful rose. If I put this rose in the wrong environment, what's gonna happen? It's not gonna grow, it's gonna die. And some of us, we have all the potential, all the gifts, we're just in the wrong environment. So you change your environment, you change your life. And some friends didn't like it. But what happened was too, a lot of friends got inspired by my change over time. And so they saw, wow, like, you're changing. Like, oh, wow, you got married. And now a lot of my friends are going through this process now. So sometimes it takes you walking out of someone's life to actually change their life.
Wow.
And that happened with me. I mean, it took a woman breaking up with me to actually make me look myself in the mirror and be like, man, it's time for you to man up and become a better man.
Amazing. Do you look at all the steps you've taken from when you started to now, and it sort of all just makes sense? And you can see God was there the whole time?
Absolutely. Like, it's like you will never connect the dots moving forward. It's always when you look back, it's how you connect the dots. So even with like football, it just made me realize how much that was just a vehicle to get me prepared for this. Like, if I would have never went through that football process, like you said, I probably wouldn't be able to handle everything that's coming in my life now. But I realized, you know, having the fame, which was very small at that time, but having the money, having everything I wanted, the success, wasn't enough. So now, fast forward here, when I'm way more known than I ever was with football and have a bigger following, whatever, like, I don't cave to those things because I know those things cannot fulfill me.
Last question, if there are people out there that are sort of struggling with certain issues, what would you say to them?
You know, your life isn't over. I would tell you to change the meaning that you're giving the pain that you're going through and say it's power. Because if you take working out, football taught me this, you take life experiences, the foundation for strength is pain. And your current situation is not your final destination. I can promise you that. There's more to your life than what you're currently going through. And also there's a greater purpose to your pain. And when you move forward, as we just talked about, everything you went through will make sense. And I love to leave with this quote: God will allow you to go through places you don't understand just to bring you to the place where he needs you to be. And I think that sums up life.
That's great. So Trent, like I said, an amazing book. How can people find out more about you, or how could they purchase the book?
For sure, you can go to thegreatestyoubook.com online to get it. My website, TrentShelton.com. Any social media outlet, just put in Trent Shelton, I'll pop up. And then, you know, anywhere books are sold, it's there. Barnes & Nobles, Target, Costco. Go pick it up.
Well, I hope people, you know, take that opportunity to read the book, because like I said, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, man.
So now you have 50 million won.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, brother. It was nice meeting you.
You too.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember, you have the ability to evangelize and inspire through your words and actions. Until next time.